The remote does it. All right, shalom, shalom, everyone. All right, so welcome to the MTOI Torah study. It's Tuesday night, it's Torah study time. That was overwhelming. Well, considering there's only 10 of you out there, it was pretty good. Okay, well, welcome to Torah study time. If you're on live stream and you're new to just found us or whatever it is, that we want to make you feel welcome. So welcome to our Torah study. So the way this is going to work, for those of you that are new and those of you are familiar, we'll just remind you. So we're going to go through what we call prayer time. So we'll take up any prayer needs, praise reports, that kind of thing within the gathered body here and online, and then we'll go ahead and read this week's Torah portion, which is a double. So we got a lot to read, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the Torah portion after some announcements. Okay, so we're going to pray, read, have some announcements, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the Torah portion. So what that means is for those of you that are here, you want to go ahead and make sure your phones are turned to silent. If you are on live stream, you don't have to make your phone silent, although it's probably a good idea. But you may want to go ahead and have something to write down notes on so that you can write down anything that comes up during the readings that you want to ask a question about or make a comment about. And so you have that with you there. Okay. So we'll go ahead and take up any prayer or praise needs here. If you're on live stream, Manny's on the desk there. You can go ahead and type things in. He probably has Kurt and Rob on there as well, just to kind of help keep the peace. Please give the guys in the, who are maintaining the chat, those three guys, your respect and their authority in the room. Okay. So anybody has a prayer? You know what, Steve? We got to remember that the chairs need to be redone. Yeah, tomorrow. Tomorrow? Okay. Because everybody's still sitting at a strange angle. I feel like I'm being half shunned as people are sitting facing away. Okay. Anybody here have a praise or prayer that they need to go ahead? Michelle, come on up. And when you come up, you're welcome to just grab the mic out of the stand and use that.
It's fine.
Okay.
Wanted to ask a prayer request for Lynn. She fractured a little baby toe today.
Oof.
So she's healing. And prayer for the Jacksons. They're on their way home. So travel mercies. And hi, Chantel, because she said she'd be watching.
Okay, yep, they're on their way.
And praise and thanks for our wonderful family here that continue to step up when I ask for help with people moving, and it's usually always the same people, and I just, ask that they'll get a special blessing for serving the body.
Amen, amen. Amen. I'm going to go ahead and throw one in here on behalf of Deirdre. Okay, so Deirdre wants us to welcome Frederick Linden Kasdorf, who was born today at 2:45 on a Tuesday. I'm telling you, except for like one exception, we've had 12 Tuesday babies in a row. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. He's a survivor of low amniotic fluid, gestational diabetes, a double row of a knot around the umbilical cord, and all kinds of other stuff around his neck and everything else. And that warrior came out, and he's doing great. So we're very excited. Praise Yah for that. Okay. And so he was born around 2:45 today, we think. So that was it. Okay, labor started last night, but of course he had to wait till Tuesday. We're going to have to write this down and figure it out. But we've had only one out of the last 8 or 10 or whatever babies born on a day other than a Tuesday. All the rest are always born on Tuesdays. And even the one was supposed to be born on a Tuesday, and it just didn't work out. Anyway, so I don't know what that means. It's just really interesting. So if you're a betting person, the next person pregnant, which we have one, we'll see if if your baby's born on a Tuesday. We'll try. We'll try. I don't think trying has anything to do with it. Deirdre wasn't even supposed to have the baby yet, but then because of the problem with the amniotic fluid and whatever else, they had to induce, and it ended up on Tuesday. So we'll see how that works out. Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, Tricia?
I'd like to lift up Steve and Bonnie Johnson. They've moved here from Florida. They're in a hotel right now and waiting to get into their house.
All right, the Johnsons are here. Okay, fantastic. I will be throwing some darts soon. Steve is my dart throwing buddy. Okay, fantastic. All right, who's next? Nobody here. Okay, you ready, Manny? You got some stuff? All right.
Okay, we got Claire Isaac. Please keep Sarah and Claire in prayer. Anonymous Mom prays for our sister Michelle, came through her surgery and is recovering at home. Evangeline prays for his provisions today. Desperate unspoken prayers needed for leadership at school and family relationship, please. Glenn and Teresa, prayer for my wife. Carrie Silveri, prayers for my poison ivy. It's definitely irritating. Carrie Ann, prayer request, please pray that Abba makes a way for me to get these painful broken teeth pulled. Knuckles has a praise and a prayer. My mom and stepdad celebrate their 28th anniversary today. Mazel tov. Brides of the Harvest, prayer request, discernment on purchasing some land. Adam, prayer for shalom. I feel like I'm losing control of my life. Scott would like prayer that I'm able to find a new job. I've been on furlough since mid-April, and it doesn't look like I'll be called back anytime soon. Pray also for our nation and elected officials. Christy Washington, prayer for opened airport in Portland, Oregon, and no changed flights to arrive safely in Tennessee.
Who is that?
Christy Washington.
Okay, welcome. Someone's flying here. Okay.
Let's see. Stephanie Henderson, prayer request for an apartment to come open soon for where I placed an application. It is income-based, and I got called today for the first interview. Also, prayers for a way to come to the Micnic.
Amen.
Miss Romana, prayer request for continued growth and discernment in my job and my walk with MTOI. Thank you, Manny, David, Stacia, Rabbi, for your support. Praise, new job with an amazing wage. Very thankful. Amen. Olivier Hoffman, Mateo just turned 12 years old today. Praise Yah for giving us our wonderful son.
Amen. Happy birthday, Mateo.
Happy birthday.
Wait, hold on. I'm sure Mateo's right there. Let's give him a scratch. Mateo likes to do the coin.
I don't know if that was Rabbi's way of calling me out too, just in case.
No, that was just for
Okay.
Mateo. That was a private
Never
one.
know.
Never know. Okay.
Let's see. Olivier and Janet Hoffman, praise Yah. Shalom, everyone. Philip Mason, please pray as I go into surgery on Thursday. Also prayers for motivation for some who are struggling. Motivation that corrective action is taken. Shelley Bell, praise Yahweh for successful surgery this morning and for all my MP sisters, and I love you all. Olivia and Janet Hoffman, praises for abundant provision, mercy, and compassion from Elohim. Kindly continuous prayers for discernment, wisdom as we plan our move to Tennessee.
Another one. Amen.
Christine Ray's prayer request, cure/answer for severe MS. Praise for good home care nurses and palliative care.
Okay, so I'll just interrupt. So apparently people are moving here alphabetically, so the Johnsons and the Jacksons are here today. So just, find out what day your letter's supposed to be here, and I'm kidding. I just couldn't resist that.
All right, let's see here.
Don't know where that came from. I just was writing down their names here so I can remember to. I said, look at that. They're both letter J. Okay, there you go.
Walter Atkins, praise report. Rachel and I both got a raise, and we've paid off one of our cars 3 years ahead of schedule.
Hi, amen.
Awesome. Shelley Bell, prayers for all those in need and for the body to stay strong in mind and heart. Not to quit, and thank you, Manny, for all that you do there. You're welcome. Santi Lee, pray for guidance of travel decision for Panama mission. April Dykes, prayer please. I have been hospitalized with cellulitis in my leg, and it is not responding to the antibiotics as quickly as they would want it to. Please pray for pain control also. Nancy Ho's prayers for total knee replacement surgery tomorrow. Melanie Thompson Black, MTOI, praise, thank you, Rabbi, for your wisdom. Ned Myers says on here, scheduled to move to Cleveland, Tennessee, 7/16. Wow.
See, we'll be from the J's to the M's by then, so we'll see. That'll work out.
And I'm caught up.
Amen. Amen. All right. Anybody else? Okay, so we want to definitely pray for all those that have contacted us since Shabbat. So it's not that many days, but that does happen. We get plenty of people that contact us. Of course, we want to keep not only in prayer, obviously, all of the things that are going on in the world regarding the adjustments to the COVID-19 thing and everything else that's going on regarding those things. Because remember I told you that this is a new world that we're going to be living in, but we just don't know what it's going to really look like yet, although it is starting to shape up into what it looks like it may be officially in some capacity. But just keep that in prayer, that we are able to adjust to and deal with whatever that looks like at that, when it finishes all of its little adjustments. And the reason I bring that up is because we do have the picnic and mikvah scheduled, and at the moment it looks like that shouldn't be a problem going out there in public and utilizing a public park. Of course, we'll be bringing a whole lot more than 25 or 50 people, but then again, I expect that the public park, if it's open, will have a whole lot more than that in it anyway, as it'll be a very likely hot and beautiful Sunday afternoon in July, and so we expect that the park will be pretty full. And also, because of the way North Carolina specifically is handling things, we are definitely needing prayer regarding feast site decisions, because we don't even know yet that the feast site will even be able to handle any size group bigger than, at the moment, they only have limits on 10. Okay, their meeting sizes are 10 or less. So, and they extended that till July 16th or 17th. So it's, so it's going to be a little bit here before we'll know if they're going to open it up even more or less, depending on the numbers going up and down and all the other craziness. Okay, so let's just keep that in prayer, because we do have decisions to make. And if we have to look for alternative sites, which we're actively doing, this is absolutely one of my least favorite things to do, because it's incredibly hard to find a place that can provide what we need for the size group that we need for that length of time. Okay? And so just so you know, that's really a tough situation that we have. Even though it might mean a lot further travel for some people, George, maybe what we need to do is extend to, whoa, lost the mic there for a second, to looking more extensively at sites or places in states that have minimal lockdown. Okay, because we have some states, the sound keeps cutting out. There are some states, I'm almost afraid to talk. It's almost like someone's messing with it, going, and then the sound's off, and then sliding the slider up and down. Okay, but there are some states that have really not had much lockdown in the middle of the country and things like that. So we just may have to pick some place that's a little further. Look, we got people that drive far and fly far to come to our sites, so we may have to go a little further to go to a site if that works out. But we may have to look at, conference centers and other places like that may be allowing things in some of the places that are just not dealing with this kind of stuff. So let's extend it from just wanting to normally look at Tennessee, North Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, that kind of thing. Yeah, I know that's the drive we do now to Ridgecrest is 4 hours, or almost three and a half or something. So, but let's extend that out specifically to states that are like really wide open, that are open, okay? All right, now, so let's keep those things in prayer as things go. We are, as a praise, the ministry itself has not been negatively in any way affected by this. Everything's been going, nicely. As you can wonder, with this kind of a thing, and people like not having more, having less work and other things, that, the tithes and offerings might have dropped off and these other things, but everything is actually maintained very nicely. We're very appreciative, praise Yah that has happened, so it hasn't had any adverse effect on any of the things that we're trying to get done. So that's been very good. Okay, I also want to praise Yah. We had a staff meeting today. It went really well. And so there's a lot of exciting things happening that we're doing, and that are, as we continue to grow in all the areas of the work that we're doing. And I am really blessed to have the guys and the ladies that are working on the staff to help put things together. Just a clarification, and we will make it more clear in the future. We'll actually have a little handout and put something on our website. But for all of you that contact us, if you need a leadership decision, then you need to talk to me or Rabbi Tom, okay? If you need something that's under a particular department, you can speak to a department head, and that's fine. They have authority in their departments, like Christine with the school, or Marty with the video and audio stuff, or David with operations, whatever it is. But just recognize that if you've spoken to anybody except myself or Rabbi Tom, you do not get to tell people, well, I spoke to leadership and leadership said this, okay? Just, it's semantics, but it's not, okay? Because what sometimes people do is they'll go around to somebody else that seems like they're in authority to get they think they'll get the answer they want out of them instead of coming to me or coming to Rabbi Tom. So let's just kind of make sure that's clear. Because I've had some people say to me, well, but I went to leadership, and then they'll name somebody that's on the staff. The staff people do have authority over their departments for certain things, but that's not the same as when you need a leadership answer, okay? All right, and the staff should, and don't be offended if they do, should redirect you and say, no, you need to talk to one of the rabbis, all right? Let's just keep that in mind as well, okay, because that'll minimize confusion, and it also will keep staff members out of trouble by having given an answer and not knowing that the person would take it as if it was coming from leadership. You understand what I'm saying? Just want to keep that clear. So this is not anything to diminish the incredible work that these other guys are doing. Just when you need certain things, you make sure you go to the right people for that, okay? So once we have, at some point, other people that are raised to the level of elder or raised to the level of rabbi, then they will also be included in leadership for those kind of questions, okay? All right. The Shamashim do have authority, and you should give them respect, but the Shamashim are not going to be there to answer your halakhic questions, and they're not there to answer those kind of things, okay? Their ministry is one much more of helps and works and those kind of stuff. All right, they do a fantastic job. And as a matter of fact, right now we have one. We have Kurt Meyer, and he does a great job. All right? Actually, you have two, but the other one's in Canada. Okay? So he's a little bit too far for you to get help from. All right, so that being said, just wanted to make that clarification because I think that will help people quite a bit. All right, so let's go ahead and have somebody open us in prayer, as well as pray for the study tonight. Okay, Rick, why don't you come up here or just reach over and grab that mic if you can. Can you do it without knocking the cameras around? There you go. And Michael's going to try to get you on the camera here. Okay, if you'll all rise, go ahead and have Rick go ahead and open us in prayer and pray for the prayer requests.
Abba, Father, we thank you for the many blessings you bestow upon MTOI and this ministry, and giving us the rabbi that we have to teach us the things we need to walk in your Torah and walk it out in our lives. We ask your presence tonight during this Torah study, and we pray for all the prayer needs that have been expressed, those that were expressed and those that were not. You hear them all, and your will be done in all cases. So we thank you for that. We pray that you be with us during this Torah study, that we may learn from your word things that we can apply in our lives to honor and glorify you. In all this we ask in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, you may be seated. Okay, so again, what we're going to do now is we're going to read the Torah portion, then we'll have a brief session with a few announcements, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the readings. Tonight we have a double portion. We've got Chukat and we've got Balak. Okay, Chukat and Balak, okay? And it's going to take us from Numbers 19 through 25:9. So it's going to be two portions. I've got 14 readers, so if we don't have enough people to read or want to read, we'll have some people do a double duty and read more than once. So if we could start lining people up in some chairs. Everybody's going to be reading about 10 to 15 verses. Okay, and we'll get, what do we got there? We got 6 chairs. So we got to fill them up at least twice, plus we got Rabbi Tom who's going to read as well. Okay. Okay. You can go up. And if we figure Rabbi Tom's going to read at the beginning, we'll finish with, maybe Manny at the end, so that's 2 of them, and then we just need to fill the chairs up twice. That's 14. That works out well. Okay? What are you guys, playing musical chairs over there? Okay. All right. So the way this works is I'm going to call you up one at a time to read. I'll tell you what verses you're going to read. I'm going to say a little traditional blessing over each reader, and then you'll go ahead and read your portion. Okay. When you come up, I'll adjust the microphone height for you. That should be no problem. And we should get that done. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. We're going to do, I'll actually let you know when we switch from one to the other. We're going to start with Chukat. Okay. And Rabbi Tom, you want to come up? You can do Chukat. Okay. And so what does Chukat mean? What are Chukim? These are the laws that don't make any sense to us. And it's going to start with the red heifer, which is certainly one of the laws that we don't understand. In other words, it's his thing. He said it. We know it. We believe it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that when you hear it, you go, oh, yeah, of course, that makes sense. Okay? So that's why these are chukim. All right, so we're going to begin with that. Let me bring this over here. Let's see what verses you're reading, 1 through 10. Okay. I'll wait for Rick to get that on. Good? All right, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rabbi Tom, go ahead and read chapter 19. And it looks like we're a little short on readers. Go ahead and read the whole chapter.
Thank you. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, this is the law of the Torah, which Yahweh has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar, the priest, and he shall bring it outside the camp, and shall slay it before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of its blood 7 times toward the front of the tent of appointment. And the heifer shall be burnt before his eyes. He burns its hide, and its flesh, and its blood, and its dung. And the priest shall take cedar wood, and hyssop, and scarlet, and throw them into the midst of the fire, burning the heifer. The priest shall then wash his garments, and shall bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp. But the priest is unclean until evening. And he who is burning it washes his garments in water, and shall bathe his body in water, and is unclean until evening. A clean man shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and shall place them outside the camp in a clean place. And they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel. For the water, for uncleanness, it is for cleansing from sin. And he who gathers the ashes of the heifer shall wash his garments, and is unclean until evening. And it shall be a law forever to the children of Israel, and to the stranger who sojourns in their midst. He who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with the water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, then on the 7th day he is not clean. Anyone who touches the dead of a human being and does not cleanse himself defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh. And that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean, for the water for his uncleanness was not sprinkled on him, and his uncleanness is still upon him. This is the Torah when a man dies in a tent, and all who come into the tent and all who are in the tent are unclean for 7 days. And every open vessel which has no cover fastened on it is unclean. Anyone in the open field who touches someone slain by the sword, or who has died, or a bone of a man, or a burial site, is unclean for 7 days. And for the unclean being they shall take some of the ashes of the heifer, burnt for cleansing from sin, and running water shall be put on them in a vessel. And a clean man shall take hyssop and dip it in water, and shall sprinkle it on the tent, and on all the vessels, and on the beings who were there, or on the one who touched a bone, or the slain, or the dead, or a burial site. And the clean one shall sprinkle the unclean on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall cleanse himself, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and shall be clean until evening, in the evening. But the man who is unclean does not cleanse himself. That being shall be cut off from the assembly, because he has defiled the set-apart place of Yahweh. Water for uncleanness has not been sprinkled on him. He is unclean. And it shall be a law for them forever. And the one who sprinkles the water for uncleanness washes his garments. And the one who touches the water for uncleanness is unclean until evening. And whatever the unclean being touches is unclean. And the being who touches it is unclean until evening.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Rabbi Tom. Appreciate that. Gave you a double portion. Gave you a double blessing there. All right, George, come on up. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless George, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to read in now in chapter 20, verses 1 through 13.
And the children of Israel, all the congregation, came into the wilderness of Sin in the first new moon, and the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled against Moshe and Aharon. And the people contended with Moshe and spoke, saying, "If only we had died when our brothers died before Yahweh. Why have you brought up the assembly of Yahweh into this wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? And why have you brought us up out of Mitzrayim to bring us to this evil place? Not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink." Then Moshe and Aharon went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tent of appointment, and they fell on their faces. And the esteem of Yahweh appeared to them. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, "Take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and your brother Aharon. And you shall speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall give its water. And you shall bring water for them out of the rock, and give drink to the congregation and their livestock." And Moshe took the rod from before Yahweh as he commanded him. And Moshe and Aharon assembled the assembly before the rock. And he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then Moshe lifted his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. And much water came out, and the congregation and the livestock drank. But Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, "Because you did not believe in me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you do not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." These waters were the waters of Meribah, because the children of Israel contended with Yahweh, and he was set apart among them.
Thank you, George. All right, Sarah Beth. "He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sarah Beth, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands." Amen. Okay, Sarah Beth's going to take us now from verse 14 to the end of the chapter.
And Moshe sent messengers from Kadesh to the sovereign of Edom. "This is what your brother Yisrael said. You know all the hardship that has befallen us, that our fathers went down to Mitzrayim, and we dwelt in Mitzrayim a long time. And the Mitzrites did evil to us and our fathers. And we cried out to Yahweh, and he heard our voice, and sent the messenger, and brought us up out of Mitzrayim. See, we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Please let us pass over through your land, and we shall not pass over through the fields or vineyards, nor drink water from wells. We shall go along the sovereign's highway. We shall not turn aside right or left until we have passed over your border. But Edom said to him, You do not pass over through me, lest I come out against you with the sword. And the children of Israel said to him, We shall go by the highway, and if I or my livestock drink any of your water, then I shall pay for it. Let me only pass over on foot, without a word. But he said, You do not pass over. And Edom came out against them, with many men and with a strong hand. So when Edom refused to let Yisrael pass over through his border, Yisrael turned away from him, and the children of Yisrael, all the company, departed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aharon in Mount Hor, near the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aharon is to be gathered to his people, for he is not to enter the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my mouth at the water of Meribah. Take Aharon and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor. And strip Aharon of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son, for Aharon is to be gathered to his people, and die there. And Moshe did as Yahweh commanded, and they went up to Mount Hor before the eyes of all the congregation. And Moshe stripped Aharon of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son. And Aharon died there on the top of the mountain. And Moshe and Eleazar came down from the mountain. And when all the congregation saw that Aharon was dead, all the house of Israel wept for Aharon 30 days.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Aaron. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Aaron who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now into chapter 21 and read verses 1 through 12.
And the sovereign of Arad, the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south, heard that Yisrael was coming on the way to Atharim, and he fought against Yisrael and took some of them captive. Then Yisrael made a vow to Yahweh and said, If you deliver this people into my hand indeed, then I shall put their cities under the ban. And Yahweh listened to the voice of Yisrael and gave up the Canaanites, and they put them and their cities under the ban. So the name of that place was called Hormah. And they departed from Mount Hor by the way of the Sea of Reeds to go around the land of Edom. But the being of the people grew impatient because of the way. And the people spoke against Elohim and against Moshe. Why have you brought us up out of Mitzrayim to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and our being loathes this light bread. And Yahweh sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Then the people came to Moshe and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahweh and against you. Pray to Yahweh to take away the serpents from us. So Moshe prayed on behalf of the people. And Yahweh said to Moshe, Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. So Moshe made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole. And it came to be, if a serpent had bitten anyone, when he looked at the bronze serpent, he lived. And the children of Israel set out and camped in Oboth. And they departed from Oboth and camped at Abarim in the wilderness, which is east of Moab, toward sunrise. From there they set out and camped at the Wadi Zered.
All right, Caleb. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Caleb, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 13 to verse 23.
From there they set out and camped on the other side of Arnon, which is in the wilderness that extends from the border of the Amorites. For the Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites. Therefore it is said in the book of the battle of Yahweh, Waheb and Suphah, the Wadi Arnon, and the slope of the wadi that turns aside to the dwelling of Ar, and lies on the border of Moab. And from there on to Beer, which is the well where Yahweh said to Moshe, gather the people and let me give them water. Israel then sang the song, spring up, O well, sing to it. A well the leaders sank, which the nobles of the people dug with their staves by the word of the inscriber. Then from the wilderness on to Matana, from Matana to Nahalil, from Nahalil to Bamoth, and from Bamoth in the valley that is in the country of Moab, to the top of Pisgah, which looks down on the wasteland. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, saying, let me pass through your land. We shall not turn into the fields of the vineyards. We shall not drink water from the wells, but go by the sovereign's highway until we have passed over your border. But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his border. So Sihon gathered all his people together and went out against Israel in the wilderness. And he came to Yahatz and fought against Israel.
Amen. Thank you, Caleb. Okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rebbe and Julie, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us to the last reading of the first Torah portion, which is Chukat. So you're going to go from 21:24 to 22:1. So you're going to cross the chapter border to 22:1.
Okay. And Israel struck him with the edge of the sword and took possession of his land from the Arnon to the Yabok, as far as the children of Ammon, for the border of the children of Ammon was strong. And Israel took all these cities, and Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon and in all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the sovereign of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and had taken all his land from his hand as far as the Arnon. That is why those who speak in Proverbs say, come to Heshbon, let the city of Sihon be built and established. For fire went out from Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It consumed Ar of Moab, the masters of the heights of the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You have perished, O people of Chemosh. He has given his sons as fugitives and his daughters into captivity to Sihon, the sovereign of the Amorites. Then we shot them. Heshbon has perished as far as Davon, and we laid waste as far as Nophah, which reaches to Medeba. So Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And Moshe sent to spy out Yazer, and he took its villages and drove out the Amorites who were there, and turned and went up by the way to Bashan. And Og, sovereign of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And Yahweh said to Moshe, do not fear him, for I have given him into your hand with all his peoples and his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. And they struck him and his sons and all his people until no remnant was left to him, and they took possession of his land. And the children of Israel set out and camped in the desert plains of Moab, beyond the Yarden of Jericho.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Rebbe and Julia. Okay. Michael? All right, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Michael, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now into the second Torah portion, Balak, and we're going to begin in chapter 22 and read verses 2 through 14.
And Balak, son of Tispor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many, and Moab was in dread because of the children of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this company is licking up all that is around us, and an ox licks up the grass of the field. Now Balak, son of Tispor, was sovereign of the Moabites at that time. And he sent messengers to Bileam, son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, see, a people has come from Mitzrayim. See, they have covered the surface of the land and are settling next to me. And now, please, come at once, curse this people for me, for they are too strong for me. It might be that I strike them and drive them out of the land, for I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed. And the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian left with the fees for divination, and in their hand they came to Bileam and spoke the words of Balak to him. And he said to them, spend the night here, and I shall bring back word to you as Yahweh speaks to me. So the heads of Moab stayed with Bileam, and Elohim came to Bileam and said, who are these men with you? And Bileam said to Elohim, Balak, son of Tispor, sovereign of Moab, has sent to me, saying, see, a people has come out of Mitzrayim and covered the surface of the land. Come now, curse them for me. It might be that I am able to fight against them and drive them out. And Elohim said to Bileam, do not go with them. You do not curse the people, for they are blessed. And Bileam rose and in the morning and said to the heads of Balak, go back to your land, for Yahweh has refused to allow me to go with you. And the heads of Moab arose and went to Balak and said, Bileam refuses to come with us. 14.
Amen, amen. Okay, Steve. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Steve, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May this set apart one bless him and his family and send blessings and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Steve's going to take us now from verse 15 to 27. That's the end of the chapter.
$27.
15 to the end of the chapter.
22? Okay.
I'm sorry. You know what? I'm missing something in my notes here. 22. Oh, you know what? I didn't write. We got one more reader than I thought because I did not write this in my notes correctly. Hold on. 22. 15 to 27.
All right.
20, 41.
All right. I was thinking, what? All right. Then Balak again sent heads more numerous and more esteemed than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, what is this? Is what Balak, son of Tispor, said. Do not be withheld from coming to me, please, for I esteem you very greatly. With whatever you say to me, I do. Therefore, please come, curse the people for me. And Balaam answered and said to the servant of Balak, though Balak were to give his house filled with silver and gold, I'm unable to go beyond the words of Yahweh my Elohim to do less or more. And now, please, do you also stay here tonight and let me find out what more Yahweh says to me. And Elohim came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call you, rise up and go with them, but only the words which I speak to you that you do. And Balaam rose up in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the heads of Moab. But the displeasure of Elohim burned because he went, and the messenger of Yahweh stationed himself in the way as an adversary against him. And he was riding on his donkey, and his two servants were with him. And his donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh standing in the way with his drawn sword and with his hand, and the donkey turned aside of the way and went into the field. So Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back onto the way. But the messenger of Yahweh stood in the narrow passage between the vineyards and with the wall, and on the side, and on a wall on that side. And when the donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh, she pushed himself against the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall, so he struck her again. And the messenger of Yahweh went out further and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn side, right or left. And when the donkey saw the messenger of Yahweh, she laid down under Balaam. So Balaam displeasure burned, and he struck the donkey with his staff.
Amen. See, that's what I get for taking all the information off of one sheet, combining it onto another, and missing one of the references. I think I got it now, though, because that's why I only had 6 there, but there should have been 7 references. And now we got them all. Okay, so we should have 3 more people after 1, 2, and Manny, so we're good. All right. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rebbetzin and Joanne, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now in from, actually, we're going to need 1 more reader. Yeah, I've got 4 after this, so that's good. Okay, Rebbetzin and Joanne's going to take us now from verse 28 to the end of the chapter. So now I got it right.
Then Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have struck me this 3 times?" And Balaam said to the donkey, "Because you have mocked me, I wish there were a sword in my hand, for I would have killed you by now." And the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours? To this day, was I ever known to do so to you?" And he said, "No." Then Yahweh opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the messenger of Yahweh standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And he bowed his head and fell on his face. And the messenger of Yahweh said to him, "Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? See, I have come out to stand against you, because your way is reckless before me. And the donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I certainly would have killed you by now, and let her live." And Balaam said to the messenger of Yahweh, "I have sinned, for I did not know you stood in the way against me. And now, if evil is in your eyes, let me turn back." And the messenger of Yahweh said to Balaam, "Go with the men, but only the words that I speak to you, that you speak." Balaam then went with the heads of Balak. And when Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at the city of Moab, which is on the border of the Arnon, which was in the extremity of the border. And Balak said to Balaam, "Did I not urgently send to you, calling for you? Why did you not come to me? And am I not able to esteem you?" And Balaam said to Balak, "See, I have come to you. Now, am I at all able to say somewhat? The word that Yahweh puts in my mouth, that I speak." And Balaam went with Balak, and they came out to court the Hush. And Balak slaughtered cattle and sheep, and he sent some to Balaam and to the heads who were with him. And it came to be in the morning that Balak took Balaam and brought him up to the highest place of Baal, and from there he saw the extremity of the camp.
Amen. All right, thank you, Rebbetzin and Joanne. Okay, Michelle. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Michelle, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Oh, you're going to take us now to chapter 23 and read verses 1 through 15.
And Balaam said to Balak, "Build 7 slaughter places for me here, and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me here." And Balak did as Balaam had spoken, and Balak and Balaam offered a bull and a ram on each slaughter place. Balaam then said to Balak, "Stand by your ascending offering and let me go on. It might be that Yahweh does come to meet me, and whatever he shows me I shall declare to you." And he went to a bare height. And Elohim came to Balaam, and he said to him, "I have prepared the 7 slaughter places, and I have offered on each slaughter place a bull and a ram." And Yahweh put a word in the mouth of Balaam and said, "Return to Balak, and this is what you say." And he returned to him and saw him standing by his ascending offering and all the heads of Moab. And he took up his proverb and said, "Balak, the sovereign of Moab, has brought me from Aram, from the mountains of the east. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, rage at Israel." How do I curse whom El has not cursed? And how do I rage at who Yahweh has not raged? For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I observe him. Look, a people dwelling alone, not reckoning itself among the nations. Who shall count the dust of Jacob and the number of 1/4 of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like his. And Balak said to Balaam, "What have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and look, you have kept on blessing." And he answered and said, "Should I not take heed to speak what Yahweh has put in my mouth?" And Balak said to him, "Please come with me to another place from where you see them. You only see the extremity, but not all of them. Curse them for me from there." And he took him to the field of Sophim, to the top of Pisgah, and built 7 slaughter places, and offered a bull and a ram on each slaughter place. And he said to Balak, "Stand here by your ascending offering while I meet over there."
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Michelle. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Marty, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 16 to the end of the chapter. Chapter 23. 16 to the end of the chapter. 23.
And Yahweh came to Balaam and put a word in his mouth and said, "Go back to Balak and say this." So he went to him and saw him standing by his ascending offering, and the heads of Moab with him. And Balak asked him, "What did Yahweh say?" And he took up his proverb and said, "Rise up, Balak, and hear. Listen to me, son of Zippor. El is not a man to lie, nor a son of man to repent. As he said, and would he not do it, or spoken, and would not confirm it? See, I have received to bless, and he has blessed, and I do not reverse it. He has not looked upon wickedness in Yaakov, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. Yahweh his Elohim is with him, and the shout of a sovereign is in him. El, who brought them out of Mitzrayim, is for them like the horns of a wild ox. For there is no sorcery against Yaakov, nor is there any divination against Israel. Now it is said to Yaakov and to Israel, what has El done? Look, a people rises like a lioness and lifts itself up like a lion. It lies not down until it devours the prey and drinks the blood of the slain. And Balak said to Balaam, do not curse them at all, nor bless them at all. And Balaam answered and said to Balak, have I not spoken to you, saying, all that Yahweh speaks, that I do? And Balak said to Balaam, please come, let me take you to another place. It might be right in the eyes of Elohim that you curse them for me from there. And Balak took Balaam to the top of Peor that overlooks the wasteland. And Balaam said to Balak, build 7 slaughter places for me here, and prepare 7 bulls and 7 rams for me here. And Balak did as Balaam had said, and offered a bull and a ram on each slaughter place.
All right, Esther. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Esther, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now to chapter 24 and read verses 1 through 14.
When Balaam saw that it pleased Yahweh to bless Israel, he did not go, as at other times, to seek to use sorcery, but he set his face towards the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes and saw Israel encamped according to their tribes. And the spirit of Elohim came upon him. And he took up his proverb and said, the saying of Balaam, son of Beor, and the saying of the man whose eyes are opened, the saying of him who hears the words of El, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes open wide. How good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel. Like the wadis that stretch out, like the gardens by a river, like aloes planted by Yahweh, like cedars beside waters. He makes waters flow from his buckets, and his seed is in many waters. His sovereign is higher than Agag, and his reign is exalted. El, who brought him out of Mitzrayim, is for them like the horns of wild ox. He devours nations, his enemies, and he breaks their bones, and with his arrows he smites. He bowed down, he laid down like a lion. And like a lion, who would rouse him? Blessed is he who blesses you, and cursed is he who curses you. Then the displeasure of Balak burned against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. Balak then said to Balaam, I summoned you to curse my enemies, and see, you have kept on blessing these 3 times. And now flee to your place. I said I would greatly esteem you, and see, Yahweh has kept you back from esteem. And Balaam said to Balak, did I not also speak to your messengers, whom you sent me, saying, if Balak should give me his house filled with silver and gold, I am unable to go beyond the word of Yahweh, to do either good or evil of my own heart. What Yahweh speaks, that I speak. And now, see, I am going to my people. Come, let me advise you what this people is going to do to your people in the latter days.
Okay, amen, amen. Okay, thank you. Manny's coming up for the last reading. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Manny, who has come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, he's going to take us now from chapter 24, 15 to chapter 25, verse 9.
24, 15.
25, 9.
Okay. And he took up his proverb and said, the saying of Balaam, son of Beor, and the saying of the man whose eyes are opened, the saying of him who hears the words of El, and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes open wide. I see him, but not now. I observe him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and shall destroy the sons of Seth. And Edom shall be a possession, and Seir shall be a possession, enemies, and Israel is doing mightily. And out of Jacob one shall rule and destroy the remnant from Ar. And then he looked on Amalek, and he took up his proverb and said, Amalek was the first among the nations, but his latter end is to perish forever. He then looked at the Canaanites, and he took up his proverb and said, firm is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. But Cain is to be burned, Till when does Ashur keep you captive? And he took up his proverb and said, Oh, who does live when El does this? And the ships shall come from the coast of Kittim, and they shall afflict Ashur and afflict Eber, and so shall Amalek, and he also perishes. And Balaam arose and left and returned to his place, and Balak also went his way. And Israel dwelt in Shittim, and the people began to whore with the daughters of Moab. And they invited the people to the slaughterings of their mighty ones, and the people ate and bowed down to their mighty ones. Thus Israel was joined to Baal Peor, and the displeasure of Yahweh burned against Israel. And Yahweh said to Moshe, Take all the leaders of the people and hang them up before Yahweh, before the sun, so that the burning displeasure of Yahweh turns away from Israel. And Moshe said to the judges of Israel, Each one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal Peor. And see, one of the children of Israel came and brought his brothers, a Midianite woman, before the eyes of Moshe and before the eyes of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping at the door of the tent of appointment. And when Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron, the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation, and he took a spear in his hand, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. Thus the plague among the children of Israel came to a stop, and those who died in the plague were 24,000.
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Manny. Thank you to all the readers. Okay, excellent job. Thank you to everyone. Okay, we have the traditional blessing after the Torah reading. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chalyei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. All right, let's go through some announcements here real quickly. Excellent. Now, there's a lot going on, and we just got introduced to next week's Torah portion, hero Pinchas. Okay? And so the beginning of his story is just starting here. But let's go through some announcements. Okay, first of all, I want to welcome our guests, and I know we do have some guests online today. And so we're excited to have you there. Okay, so let's go through some of the things that happen on our calendar. We have our Torah study like we're doing tonight. We do this every week. So if you're new, you can come every week, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on YouTube, and you can study along with us. We have a youth program that goes through the Torah portion. It's called Parsha Pearls, and it has a separate website, MTOI.org. It's a free program. You can download a PDF with a discussion of an aspect of the Torah portion. It has coloring pages. It has fill in the blanks to see if the children were paying attention, crossword puzzles, mazes, a snack, a craft, a notebook page, a song. I mean, it's tremendous stuff. Your children will love it. It'll help them engage with the word of Yah, and it's a fantastic program. And it's all put together by a tremendous staff working with my wife to put together this program, and it will bless your children. And if you're an adult, you'll enjoy it too. If you want to go through it and enjoy it as well, especially if you're new, it'll help you to really understand some of the things in a more basic way. Also, we have audio scripture readings. Okay, we have our own Shira Wendling has read pretty much all the Torah portions. I think it should be up this week, so we'll have all 5 books by Torah portion read from the ISR scriptures. And so if you like to listen to the word read, you can go on our website, MTOI.org, and go to under media, look for audio scripture readings, and you can listen to them there. And like I said, they're broken up by book and by Torah portion. Okay, so you'll be looking under the book of Numbers or Bimidbar, and you'll be seeing the Torah portion for today. Okay, or the double portion, that is, for today. All right, every Shabbat we meet at 1:15 Eastern Time. Okay, 1:15, so we actually get together for 1 o'clock. We have some announcements or a little slideshow going on with some music and things while you're waiting to get started. Services starts on time about 1:15. All right, so you can participate with us for that. Then on Friday, July 10th, we're going to have an Erev Shabbat meal together. All right? Okay, and we're going to do that oneg style, so just plan like we normally do on Shabbat oneg. Come ready to have Erev Shabbat dinner. On July 12th, that Sunday, we're going to have a picnic in Mikveh. We're hoping to do that at Chester Frost Park. Okay, and so as far as people might ask, well, what time should you be there? Well, whenever you get there, we'll be fine. We're hoping to start officially by around noon. Okay, so people will get there and start getting started with their food and eating and everything else, and we should get officially started around noon. But you're welcome to get there anytime. And I'm sure we'll have some locals here volunteering to get there early to help secure some space for us. And so we should hopefully have that worked out. Okay, for the picnic and mikveh, you're on your own for food, for chairs, for tents, and all the other things that you might need to bring. We will provide you with the drinks. If you want to bring your own, that's fine. But we're going to have a couple of garbage pails filled with bottled water and sodas and things like that. We'll also have some large dispensers with lemonade and iced tea and that kind of stuff. So, okay? So we should have that all covered. Now, when we're there, just a reminder in advance, if you have children, your children are not to take those things by themselves. Okay? You need to have them ask you to go get them one or go with them, so we don't have them just grabbing 75 of them, taking one sip, putting it down, losing it, and forgetting about it and that kind of thing. Because they will be running around having so much fun, they will get distracted so easily. All right? Let's see. Then on July the 19th, on that Sunday, we'll be having our next leadership meetings. The South Africa leadership at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and then at noon, the full leadership. And again, the South Africans, of course, are invited to that as well, and they usually do come. But they do have their own things that sometimes need special, unique attention. All right, and so that's only for the leaders. You know who you are. You'll get your email invite to that. Okay, then on July the 21st, on that Tuesday night, we're going to be having both our Torah study and Rosh Chodesh for the month of Av. That's the next month. Okay, that'll be on Tuesday, July 21st. So that Wednesday is actually the 1st. Okay, so we're going to do this after sundown, in between the readings and during the announcement time. We'll probably do the Rosh Chodesh service. So we'll be meeting here for dinner first. Hey, another chance to eat together. Okay, we're going to meet here for dinner first. And then 8 o'clock, we'll start the Torah study. And then close to 9 o'clock, it's like right now, it's a little after 9, and we're doing the announcements. So it'll be sometime around the announcement time that we'll be doing the Rosh Chodesh service after sundown. And then we'll continue with the discussion portion of the Torah readings, of the Torah portion. Okay, so that'll be on Tuesday, July 21st. All right, and that should cover for that. Normally, we'd have more slides to talk about things like Sukkot, but right now that's kind of in limbo, so we're going to wait on that. Okay, so I think that covers it for the announcements. We're good, right? All right, so let's go ahead and get ready here for the interactive discussion. So if you're online, Manny is taking note of whatever your comments or questions are. Some of the ground rules, okay? You only get to ask a question if I like you and if I approve of what you're going to ask. No, I'm kidding. It's not even 10 o'clock already. I'm getting to be like a wise guy with this whole thing. Okay, so here are the ground rules. What we'd like to do is two things. Same ground rules every week. Number one, I want us to be looking for yourself. I want you to look for us in the Torah portion. In other words, can you relate it all to Balak? Maybe you can relate it a little bit to Bilam. Maybe you can relate a little bit to something else that's going on. Look for what can you learn from this. Because remember, Paul says these things are written as examples for us so that we can learn from them. So look for yourself in the Torah portion. And then the other thing I'd like us to do is try to take it chronologically. So we'll start in Chukat in chapter 19 and work our way to chapter 25, okay? So we're not going to be super strict with that if there's a reason that we need to jump around a little bit, but let's try to catch the flow of the Torah portion in order, because a lot of times it's in that flow that we get our answers, all right? So if you're here and you want to start us off while Manny's making note of things, I'm absolutely just beside myself with shock. Steve has something first. That never happens, but every week. Steve, come on up. And let me guess, it's in chapter 19 in the first verse.
Yeah, it happens to be. I don't know. This just jumped out at me. Okay. For me, 19 verse 1, once again we have an example where instruction is given to leadership and they are instructed on what to do and how and what to give, and nowhere in there does it ask for our opinion. And I would go as even so far as it could be instruction that he's given to complete your vision, and we are to assist in completing your vision, not altering it.
Okay. That was a lot to glean out of a red heifer, but...
Well, hey. And then if I could, since I'm here, I'll jump to chapter 20, verse 4.
Go ahead.
My question is, I'd like to ask her, is that our default? Do we wish we had what we once had that used to be a complaint on our lips daily when it comes to be a challenge? Or do we seek to conquer our challenge?
Amen.
Maybe if we continue to run from our challenge, the challenge will continue to be on our heels.
Amen. Okay, excellent. The ever deep thinking Mr. Steve Waffle. Okay, who's next? Okay, Rabbi Tom's coming up, and while he's coming up, I wrote down in my notes so that you know what Chukat means. It's an ordinance that only makes Peshat sense to Yahweh. How's that for a definition for it? It's an ordinance or a law or an instruction that only makes Peshat. If you don't know what I'm talking about with Peshat, okay, there's the Jewish sages and community that study this more and longer than anybody else has inferred from the study of Torah that there's 4 levels at least of interpretation that you can look at Torah on, and those 4 levels are Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Peshat being the simple, straightforward, basic understanding of something, and so when we look at a Chukat or a Chukim, one of the laws that are this type of ordinance, it only makes Peshat sense to him. We look at it and go, okay, I don't understand it, but you said it, so we're going to do it. And so that's the definition for that. Okay, go ahead, Rabbi Tom.
All right, thank you. I notice in chapter 19, there's numerous mentions of death and being unclean, and numerous mentions of water and bathing. So would it be fair to say that one of the themes of this chapter could be cleansing from dead works?
I wouldn't say that necessarily, only because the works were very important and I needed to do them, but doing them would put them in contact with death, which would make them have to then get washed. So I don't know that I would put it that way.
Not kind of dead
Yeah, because dead works are works that accomplish nothing.
Right.
Okay, and they're doing works that were important to do, but they were coming in contact with death.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
So it's the idea of getting away from death works, I guess, as opposed to dead works.
Death works, yeah.
Okay?
And Steve Waffle mentioned 20 verse 4, why have you brought up the assembly of Yahweh into this wilderness? Earlier, Korach referred to Egypt as a land of milk and honey. So a lot of people had their priorities mixed up.
Yeah, well, this is always the case. They were all excited until they weren't excited. Okay, until things, he kept allowing things to go in from an abundant way into a, lack, so to speak, so that he would test them to see if they would feel lack or they would trust him to provide abundance again. And they never seem to appreciate the abundance because, after all, you see them whining about, this manna stuff, we're tired of that. Yeah. Okay, even though it's a miracle that it shows up every day and all the other stuff, but, Okay, so I want to just kind of, on the heels of what Rabbi Tom was saying, so just keep in mind when you read about the washings. 19, verse 7, verse 8, etc., says things like, the priest shall then wash his garments and shall bathe his body in water. You see that again in verse 8, and he who is burning the ashes, burning it, washes his garments in water, and then shall bathe his body in water. We read this through 21st century eyes, okay? We're not reading it through the eyes of back then. And I'll tell you what, I'm watching a series right now. I'm just happen to be watching a series that deals with, the formation of England as a full country of all little kingdoms in it. And when you watch it, you see that most people are pretty dirty most of the time. Their clothes are dirty, their skin is dirty, they all look like they just played in the mud almost all the time. And you rarely see anybody wash. And when you do, they're going into the river. They're going into the streams to wash, which is probably pretty cold, especially in the northern parts of England. So just kind of bear in mind that this was an instruction to do something, because you would think, well, of course we wash our clothes, we wash our bodies, so what was so special about this one? No, this was an instruction to do something they didn't generally do. Not real often. I mean, we would think about, hey, you wear your clothes, you put them in the laundry, and then once a week or whatever it is, you go and do the laundry, or twice a week, whatever it is. You take your shower or your bath pretty much probably almost every day. But here, this is a group of people that are living at a time where they just did not do that. They didn't have the accessibility to, like we do with the plumbing systems that we have, to be able to just take a shower. It's a real simple thing. You go in, you turn on the water, you wash, you turn it off, whatever. They didn't have that simplicity and that access. So these instructions need to be taken through their eyes, not just through your own. Now this is where we get the idea of a mikvah, or tevila, immersion. Okay, you were to wash your body. Where would you do this? In a thing that we call a mikvah, a place called the mikvah. And so this is when a Christian-minded person would think, well, there's only one baptism and that's it. Well, we lost the sound again. The sound system is acting very weird today. Okay, but a Jewish-minded person would think, well, there's lots of reasons to get baptized or immersed. Here are some of them right here. You come in contact with something that's dead. You did something with the red heifer. You did something with the ashes of the red heifer. Okay? All these different things that you needed to understand that would cause you to need to be immersed. All right? Now, the key is that if you did not do it, you were unclean. That's tameh, which meant that you could not go into the temple. You could not do any of the other things that were necessary related to the temple. And so you had to wash, and then you were still considered unclean until evening, or unclean for so many days. I mean, under certain circumstances, you're unclean for 7 days. Now, if you read that, you'll also understand then why the instruction to the Levites, especially to the Kohanim, was that they were not to go into any place where there was a dead body, even a family member. They were told, stay away from dead bodies. Why? Because then you couldn't do anything for 7 days. And so this was now helping us to understand an instruction that we would have read about in Leviticus, that you now see more about here in Numbers, to understand why they were not to come into contact where there was a dead body. Okay, which I never understood. For example, I tell this story. My grandfather, who was a Kohen, on my mother's side, he was a Kohen, and he would never go to funerals, never went to hospitals where people were dying. I thought he just was afraid of death. You know how there are people that just don't want to go anywhere where there could be death? But he was a Kohen, and he took it as that instruction. Now, there's no temple, so it was kind of unnecessary to take it that far, but he was doing what he understood and would not go to a grave site, would not go where there were people that were sick or could be dying, like in a hospital. So that's an interesting sort of connection for those two things there. You see that in chapter 19, verses 14 through 16. This is why the Kohens don't deal with things that are dead. Okay, next comment or question. Marty?
So it's curious to me, and I don't know if there's anything in the fact that all these elements on their own causes people to be unclean when they're having to deal with them, but then it also makes a person clean when they're put together in a certain way in water, and then it makes a person clean. So that's kind of a conundrum to me, that what can make unclean also makes clean.
Well, that's why it's a chukim. See, that's your definition of chukim right there. We, in our flesh, as best we can understand it, feel exactly the same way Marty just did, where we read something and go, that doesn't make logical pashat sense to me. Okay? Yet, it's truth and it works, it just doesn't make any logical sense. So he just spoke on behalf of all of us. That's how when we read some of the instructions, this is just some of them right here, but there's a lot of other ones that Yahweh has given where we just sit there and go, I don't get it, but okay. All right? And those are the ones that probably in all the universe, those are the only ones that legitimately are because I said so. Because even as a child, you ask a parent something, the parent is not that they don't want to explain it to you or they can't. It's because they don't want to argue with you by giving you anything to argue with. So they just said, because I said so, that gives you nothing to argue about. These are because I said so, is because we can't understand it anyway. He just said, I'm not going to explain it. It probably goes into too much depth of something that we just wouldn't understand anyway. He just says, just do it. And so, so I appreciate that Marty expressed that's exactly the kind of thing with the red heifer, why that's our perfect example of what a chuk or a chukim is, what the ordinances that fit under this category. All right, who's next? All right, live stream.
Can I add to something that I saw earlier on a Q&A that you were doing a long time ago?
No. Okay, next question.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead. I'm teasing.
Just regarding people's need to know certain things. Why did he do this? Why did Yahweh? What's the significance of it? Like all these things. You said something so profound. You said, if Yahweh didn't tell me, I'm okay not knowing.
Exactly.
And I thought that was profound because a lot of people were asking you questions that really didn't have to do anything with the walk.
Okay, I'll say something to add to that profoundness. He tells you what you need to know, not what you want to know.
Beautiful.
Okay? You need to know how to do this. You need to know why to do it, as far as like, under these circumstances, this is what you need to have to cleanse somebody from sin or whatever it is. So you need to know what it's used for, but you don't need to have all the information of what you want to know. I want to understand it. I want more detail. He says, no. I've told you what to do, how to do it, and I'll tell you also under what circumstances it's necessary to do, and that's all you need to know. But see, we have to recognize that scripturally, he really comes down really hard, especially as we get into things like Revelation, on the idea of being Gnostic. Okay? And the Gnostics were in love with and almost worshiped the idea of secret or hidden knowledge. All right? And so it's the Gnostic in us. We all have that sort of little Gnostic part of us that wants to know everything, especially the stuff that most people don't know. All right, we get so excited if we get something that we know and others don't know and think we're special now that we have this special hidden knowledge. Okay? I used to jokingly call it the new doctrinal understanding crack that we're all addicted to. All right? Go ahead. Well, my mic still keeps cutting out, but go ahead.
Okay. First question says, chapter 19, verses 12 and 13. Do those verses translate to those who work in geriatrics?
Okay, none of these verses translate to anything today. Okay? These are all temple-related things. Once you see the term unclean in regard to having to do washings and other things, or being unclean until evening, see, you're thinking of things to a certain degree through, again, that Christianized mindset. Like being a sinner is a designation that you need to repent of and fix, because otherwise that messes you up in some relational way, etc. This is something physically that is not sin, it's not anything like that. You just do something that makes you no longer in a state which you're allowed to interact with Yahweh on the level that's necessary in the temple. That's why we have a teaching called Tameh and Tahor. What state are you in? You're in a state of clean or unclean. Tameh is unclean, Tahor is clean. And so when you're in the state of Tameh, you can't do certain things restricted in dealing with the temple and the offerings and the temple service. And so you are not doing that, doing your geriatric stuff. You're not doing that. None of you are doing any of this. The temple doesn't exist, so none of you has to worry about functionally doing this. What you want to do is understand it and take out of it some of the metaphors that are being taught to us in it. Okay? So here's a metaphor. If you find yourself unclean, you need to do something to become clean. So when you sin, you need to repent and do teshuvah. When you touch a dead body so that you can go into the temple, you need to wash your clothes. You need to wait a certain period of time, and then you can go do that thing. In other words, it's just telling you that there are steps to deal with your state. All right? So while these things cut you off from physically interacting, when we sin, it cuts us off in terms of our actual direct connection vertically without having to go anywhere. Wherever you go, you're either able to have that relationship or it's cut off. So when Yeshua says in the model prayer, if you do not forgive others their sins, he will not forgive yours. And if yours aren't forgiven, you can't interact vertically because that cuts you off from him in relationship. That's something that follows you everywhere. Everyone, it keeps cutting out. Okay, it's something that follows you everywhere. So this is specific to the temple. All right? All right, next question.
Okay, next one is for chapter 20. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, chapter 20, verses 12 and 27. Moshe still obeyed Yahweh even after receiving the judgment. I guess it was a comment. And then that's all I have for 20. Next question is regarding 21.
All right, anybody here for 20 or, okay, come on up. And I do as well, so go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to get to the point on this chapter because it's bugged me. But so
we do a lot of exterminating and pest control and debugging.
Good. This is a bug.
Okay.
So if the only two people that I see that was given the command to speak to the rock, the only people that heard it that I can see are Moshe and Aharon. So he goes out and he's mad at the people and he hits the rock. And then it's said, and nothing is said after that about him hitting the rock with his staff. But he does say, you haven't set me apart in front of the people. Well, the people didn't hear the command given to Moshe and Aharon. So what is that?
Okay, so that's a great question. If you look at verse 12, all right? But Yahweh, that was in my notes to go to that at some point. Okay, but Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, because you did not believe me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you do not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Now, remember this whole situation of leadership representing him. Now, the people at this point, why was Moses upset? Because they were still whining. We're hungry, we're thirsty, there's no water, there's no food, and we don't like this manna stuff. Now, leadership, in this case Aaron and Moses, who represent Yah, are supposed to represent him the way he would represent. Now, if they're complaining, as is evident in other verses, where when they complain to Moses, Yahweh says they're complaining about me. They're complaining, to you, but it's about me. And he said, you did not represent me. I told you, this whining group of people, go speak to rock and give them water. So if I'm not all angry about it right now, why are you? So you're not setting me apart. You're not believing. That's the part of the verse, is not just the setting apart, but the believing. Okay, in other words, you didn't believe to just do what I asked you to do, because if I'm not mad at them at this point, and he was mad at them plenty of times, and frustrated and disappointed with the way they whined and complained. But if I told you just to go speak to the rock and give them the water, because that was part of my plan for them, then you should have just done it the way I told you. Okay, but you added, remember we have told not to add or take away? Instead of speaking, you decided to, not only did he lose his temper, but he spoke to them and he said, you lousy, rotten rebels, you rebellious children of Israel. And see, that's the problem. He says, here now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? Plus, he said, shall we? So he also was usurping a little bit. He was taking a little bit on himself. So that's why verse 12 kind of clarifies this. He said, you didn't believe me. You didn't set me apart and let them know Yahweh has decided to give you this water and speak to the rock. But you said, you got mad, took it personally. The feelings bag was overflowing. And so even Moses had his moments with that. And you can't, you can understand. I was saying you can't blame him. Because, look, how would you react to relentless whining? It's really hard to deal with. Does that answer your question, Marty? Okay. It's really hard to respond to relentless whining in a calm and, and collected way, so to speak. But this is what it is. Yahweh told them what to do. And then Moses and Aaron, okay, did not believe that Yahweh, when he says you didn't believe me, okay, if I give you instruction and I'm in charge and you're working and submitted to me, and you go and do things differently than I said, you didn't believe that what I wanted done was the right thing to do, and that is the way it should be done, and to trust it. And that's what they did. They didn't trust Yahweh to do exactly what he said, the way he had said, and that would be enough. Moses felt like, but that doesn't address the whining, complaining, rebelliousness of these people. I need to throw that little extra in there. And Yahweh says, that's not setting me apart. See, because I do things that other people don't do. I'm not a human being. I'm not a man to get angry and all these other things and lose my temper. Now, I know people say, well, we see him lose his temper. Well, no, he's got zealousness and he does things in a certain way, and we're described in human emotions to understand some of what he does. But he is infinite patience, infinite compassion, and it all fits into a bigger picture that when we get angry, we don't have that. We don't have that capacity. So that's a great question. It was in my notes to cover that, so thank you for hitting on that, Marty. It was good, okay? It's all because they didn't believe that what Yahweh said was sufficient. Take that as an important note for all of us. Yahweh allows things to happen or causes them to happen, but yet it's not always going to be, in your mind, sufficient. You want justice, he does a certain thing that he believes is justice, but you didn't think it was enough justice, so you want more. Moses is thinking, these loudmouth, whiny Israelites, and you're just going to give them water and say nothing. Well, I'm going to say something. I'm serious, right? I mean, he had it up to wherever, way above whatever his head is. He just had enough. And of course, Aaron, well, there we go. What is going on with this microphone in the sound system today? Okay, so Aaron gets sort of tagged into this because why? He was supposed to be with Moses making the points. Even though Moses is doing the talking, but it's almost like a husband and wife are considered one. In this case, both the Levitical and the Melchizedekian were considered one. They together were leading the people, Moses and Aaron. So Aaron gets in trouble even though he didn't say anything. But he's there standing with Moses. And so that was kind of, guilt by association. They were supposed to be doing it together. Okay? So hopefully that answered the question. Good question. Anything else for chapter 20? You didn't have anything more for 20, did you? Or you did?
Can I say something?
Yeah.
And this is just a thought that came to me. It could be completely out in left field. Is it possible that Yahweh, in telling Moshe to speak to the rock, and then Moshe not obeying and hitting the rock, was a way of Moshe actually ruining a future type and shadow of speaking to the rock and out of the rock flowing living waters?
Okay, I kind of get where you're going, but I'm going to take it a little further or something, okay? All right, so maybe this is a metaphor for us as being stubborn rocks, and that he's going to speak to us to get us to bring forth water instead of beat us to bring forth water. Okay, maybe that's a metaphor, because I kind of saw you going kind of in that direction. So, but I mean, that's what more occurs to me, is that we are stubborn as rocks. Okay, dumb as dirt and stubborn as rocks. But he speaks to us to bring forth the water. All right? And that's the living waters of Yeshua and the Torah and all that stuff, life, everything that is the word. But on the other hand, Moses goes to beat the rock, and that should be for all the lessons. So we're supposed to speak the word, not beat people with the word. I mean, there's all kinds of metaphors you can take out of this. And actually, these two Torah portions are just overflowing with literal and metaphorical, because we're going to see a lot of that with Balaam and the donkey. There's a lot of literal and metaphorical stuff going on, okay? All right, so in chapter 21, anybody going once, going twice? Manny? Go ahead, 21.
Okay, 21, we have on question on 21:14, what is the book of battles?
You can get that on Amazon. I don't know. Look, there's several things that are mentioned in Scripture that don't exist today accessibly. It's like the book of Yashar is mentioned, but we're not sure if the one that they had translated and found only basically in the 13th century or 1300s, but it was either 14th century or 13th century, is actually legitimately from a Hebrew version or something. But, it's referenced twice that there's a book of Yashar somewhere. There's Annals of the Kings. There's different books that are mentioned that we don't have. Okay, so I don't know.
Okay, next one for 21:5. What is the proper posture to take with Yah while in the wilderness, whether lack or whatever? How does one respond to the lack of water or food in the desert?
Okay, look, this comes down to something that, I've been saying a ton lately. If Yahweh has you set on a path, you should never have a fear that you're not going to make it. And that's what's happening here. He said, I will bring you to the land. And so here they are feeling like, well, we're going to die before we get there. We don't have food, we don't have water. Why would he bring you out in the wilderness just to die? He said he would take you to where you're supposed to go. But he's testing you to see if you're going to panic or not. Are you going to trust him? It doesn't matter that he already provided them with water several times, food several times, and all these other miracles. But this is, again, an example for us for how many things that he has to do in your life. How many times does he have to do things in your life that you're going to stop panicking when it looks like now this time it's not going to work? This time it's going to come crashing down on my head and it's just going to completely fall apart. He's always been there for you. He's shown you over and over again. And again, are you trusting, just like Moses, he said, you did not believe me. Well, do you believe him when he called you and told you, I'm going to take you to the kingdom? I've called you to come to the kingdom. That is what I've called you to do. Oh, but I don't understand and I'm frustrated and my marriage is on the rocks and I'm broke and I lost my job and I just found out from the doctor that I've got this disease and so what? That's not what it's all about. What it's all about is, are you going to end up eventually where he says he's taking you to? That's something the people here also were not believing, that he was going to get them from where they were to the place he was taking them. Okay, that's your powerful metaphor there. Okay? Next question.
Mic drop and next question.
I'm not allowed to do mic drops. Marty gets mad. You'll have to reboot? What, to fix the... No, he was just saying mic drop as like a...
Nobody's saying he'll have to reboot.
Oh, you'll have to reboot if I drop the mic? No, we're not talking about that. He's talking about a mic drop moment. Well, let's just see if we can hold on a little longer, see what happens. Okay, he's saying that if the mic keeps dropping out, we'll have to reboot the system to make that work.
Correct. Okay, 22. 22:20. It seems as
Wait
though...
a minute, did we finish 21?
Oh, did you? Okay.
Okay, 21, going once, going twice. Caleb wants to go. Okay. Richard, did you have something for 21 also? Okay, so you can be on deck for that. You can just grab the mic out of the stand there and step up and make your comment or question.
Yeah, it's actually to add on to what we were talking about earlier. It says in verse 4, but the being of the people grew impatient because of the way. And know a lot of times in our own life we can see where, like you said, we're panicking or we're in a situation and we're thinking of how we pray about something and it's going to go a certain way. So we're already in the wrong mindset of, hey, this is the way I want it to go, instead of when things are going wrong, realizing that it's the way he wants it to be because of how he needs to grow us.
Okay, amen. All right, so when you're in a car with your children and they go, are we there yet? Are we there yet? So just turn around and say, be quiet, children of Israel. Be patient. Because that's basically the same mindset, right? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? My father had an answer for that. When are we going to be there? 15 or 20 minutes. It didn't matter if we were going to Florida from New York. 15 to 20 minutes. An hour later, when are we going to be there? 15 to 20 minutes. He'd say that 37 times till we got to Florida. It didn't matter. 15 to 20 minutes. And after a while, we figured out quickly that that meant nothing. Okay. Okay, Richard, go ahead. It helps if you, there you go. If the light's on, it means that it's muted.
Is that not muted now? Thanks for setting me up. I was looking at verse 5, and it made me think of me. They're complaining about the no food, no water. And this part's not quite right. I don't loathe what Yahweh's done for me, but I sometimes forget about the bread. And it's like, okay, so you saved my life, but what have you done for me lately?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that we can get out of this. Look, and here's the funny thing. They thought it was wonderful, and it tastes like coriander seed, and it was just so delicious and fantastic, and now they loathe it. It's their attitude that made it sour in their mouths. You know? Anybody else for 21? Do you have anything, Manny, or can I add some stuff here? Do you have 21? We're good. Okay, so I had one. Well, two. Okay, so in chapter 21, verse 2, I know this comes out occasionally. People want to know what under the ban means. Under the ban means to utterly and completely destroy. Okay? So when it talks about, I shall put their cities under the ban, you're going to go in there and destroy everything. Okay? So under the ban is a phrase that people are not usually familiar with. And then in 21:8, people want to know about this. What's about this bronze serpent? Seems kind of pagan, ritualistically weird. Okay, so what's happening here? You have a fiery serpent on a pole, and the people had to look at it. Now think of it in connection to, I've got to see where I put it in my notes, where it was in the second one. Where did I put that? Oh man, I know I put it in the, okay, here it is. All right, so so we're going to link 21:8 to 21:5. All right, so 21:8, it says, and Yahweh said to Moshe, make a fiery serpent, set it on a pole, and it shall be that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live. Okay? Now, so everyone that looks at it shall live. Now, this is important. Now, I think that this is a metaphor for the medical, no, I'm kidding. Right? They got the serpents on the pole. No, this is a metaphor, okay, for looking at the devil that has been in your ear, the serpent, to get you to whine and complain and do the things. You're going to have to look at it and own it and recognize that's what you've allowed to happen in your life. Okay, look at chapter 25 and in verse 4, okay? And Yahweh said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and hang them up before Yahweh, before the sun, so that the burning displeasure of Yahweh turns away. In other words, take those people, the leaders who, again, led the people astray and let them do the things they did, and hold them up for people to look at and say, do you see the problem here? So rather than look at it as worshiping a pagan thing on a stick, a serpent, it's fiery on a pole, it has more of a metaphor possibly for looking at that's what caused the problem. You allowed the serpent to lead you. And you got to look at it and own it and recognize the problem. Does that make any sense to anybody possibly? Okay? All right? Again, every time I know a lot of you are thinking, if you've done this year after year, yeah, I've read this Torah portion a million times and blah, blah. I've read it probably more than most of you. I'm not bragging or anything, but I listen always, like I told you on Shabbat, with open, new, fresh ears, looking to hear something that I've not heard before, looking to put pieces together I've not put before. That was one of them when I saw 25 and verse 4 and connected it to 21 and verse 8. Why did the people have to look at it? Not to worship a pagan thing, symbol, an animal on a stick, but remember, it was the metaphor of the serpent that led them astray, starting at the garden. And this was another one of those moments where they were allowing themselves to be influenced by the adversary, by going and rebelling. Our rebellion is of the adversary. And so you're going to have to look at your, it's kind of like, you take the dog and you put their face in the stuff and just try to get their attention. This is Yahweh putting our faces in and saying, look if that's the problem. Not look at it for your healing, but recognize this is why you were in trouble, because you allowed the serpent to influence you. Just a thought. Next question. Okay, Rabbi Tom.
I just thought it was interesting that many years later, King Hezekiah ordered the serpent destroyed.
There you go.
Because it became an object of worship.
Sure, absolutely. And of course, this is why the doctors put it on their staff, because they think that it's a symbol of healing, Okay, anybody else? Chapter 22. Okay, Esther?
Okay, Mom. Oh, I'm sorry.
And you got to put it right up at your mouth.
I guess speaking on the serpent, on 7 it says, when the people came to Moshe, they said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahweh and against you. Pray to Yahweh to take away the serpent from us. And then that's when Yahweh told him to put the serpent on a pole. And I think, like, in our lives, like, we kind of pray to take the metaphor of the serpent. For me, this is like, I can understand this because, you know, you can constantly pray to take whatever it is, the adversary thought, you know, away. Take it away from me, Yahweh, so I don't have to look at it or remember it. But in the long run, forgetting it just keeps you repeating it. So you have to remember, like, where he's brought you, what you've done. You can't just, you know, in Christianity, they tell you, cast it off, never look at it ever again. No, you have to remember it. You have to look at it. You have to look at it in the face and say, you know, it's not an idol in some sense. For me, it's a remembrance to not do it again.
Amen. You know, it's interesting how the serpent is being connected again to biting something. Biting an apple, biting the people. You know, we've had the metaphor of biting you in the you-know-what. If you do something that you shouldn't be doing, it's going to come back and bite you. You know, we have those phrases that we all understand. And so, you know, people had to recognize that when they were going into rebellion, it's like letting the serpent, you know, do these things in your life, and it's going to come back and bite you. And so he said, fine, look up at the serpent, recognize the problem, and you'll be healed. Because then you can get over it and fix it yourselves by recognizing that's what the problem is. Okay? All right, what else? Okay, 22, 23. Actually, I probably have some things in 22. We got 22. Now we're going to be dealing with Balaam and Balak.
Okay. Also, just a quick thought that you said that the snake bites the apple. I was thinking of...
No, the snake didn't bite the apple, but the people, you know, Adam and Chava ate the apple, but it had to do with biting.
Oh, got it.
I'm saying the serpent is somehow connected to biting. So the serpent got involved in somebody or something got bit, and that's where the problem comes. So here the serpents are biting them as opposed to listening to serpents, so it still comes around.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, on 22:20, question is, it seems as though Yah told Balaam to go, so why did he get upset later? Am I misreading this?
Strange how that question comes up every year. And Manny's like, yeah, I know, that's why I asked the question. Okay, so what was the problem? Well, you know, if you follow the context, and again, we can read these things and we get messed up because we don't actually follow the context. What did Yahweh say in verse 20? Okay, he said, and Elohim came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men come to call you, rise and go with them. See, sometimes we forget step one. And then it says, Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the men, went with the heads in verse 21. It doesn't say that the men came to call on him. He just took it upon himself to get up and go. So this is where we can get in so much trouble. We only take kind of part of the instruction and miss some of the important little elements. It's like making the recipe for the cake or trying to build something that has instructions and missing a couple of steps at the beginning. And it doesn't come out right. So this is supposed to be if. Now, there was permission given to go with an if. All Balaam heard was permission to go. Some of you have children. You know you've done this with your children. You told them something, and they went and did something. And you said, why did you do that? Well, you said, I could. No, I said you could if, or after, or when something else happened first or was done. Can I have a cookie? Yes, after you finish blah, blah, blah. And then they run and have a cookie. Wait a minute, I told you, but you said I could have the cookie. I said, no, I said after. Did you finish the other thing? No. Okay? We hear what we want to hear selectively. Balaam wanted to go. Okay, so let's kind of put this in perspective. I need to kind of pause here to help you understand. Okay, so who's Balaam? Balaam is a prophet of some sort to the gods. He's hearing from Yahweh directly, but apparently he hears from other gods as well. And so he's just used to following whatever instruction he gets. So he's like, look, if the instruction I'm getting, oh, Siri thought I was talking to Siri. That was kind of funny. Be quiet over there. All right. So Balaam, that's why when he says, look, on behalf of dealing with Israel, Israel's God is Yahweh. Yahweh talked to me. He says, you can't do this. And that's why he says the very important phrase, I cannot go beyond what Yahweh has told me. And that's a phrase you should be able to use with anybody asking you to do anything that Yahweh has told you not to do. Say, I cannot go beyond the word of Yahweh. So Balaam did well there. But you notice Balaam has no problem going to the next mountain and going to the next mountain and making more sacrifices and taking another shot and another shot because he gets paid to be the middleman. He does not care what either side has to say, whether it's the God or the people. He just gets paid to be the conduit. Are we understanding this? So Balaam is very happy to go with these people. He just wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to the if. Okay? And so, because you might wonder, well, why is he as a false prophet being spoken to by Yahweh? Yahweh talks to a lot of different people in Scripture. But in this case, Balaam didn't make a differentiation that Yahweh is different than any of the other ones. He just got spoken to, and he said, fine, so I got spoken to. I'm going to do what he says. But he wanted to continue because he wanted to get paid. So he kept hoping that if I go beseech. Now, maybe with his other interactions as an oracle, the gods gave him different answers. Or he would interpret things as the gods giving him different answers, whatever was happening in that paganism. And so, because I'm sure that happened a lot where somebody would ask you to go before the gods and you would do your little, bones or, tea leaves or whatever thing you would kind of try to do to kind of discern and pray and whatever they did and make their little offerings. And then, they didn't get the answer they wanted, so they went back and did it again and went back and did it again until they got an answer everybody was happy with and he can get paid. Now, he must have been really good because I don't think a sovereign generally would allow him to live every time he was stubbornly blessing when he was told to curse. Although at the end, Balak says, look, you better just get out of here because I'm probably going to kill you. You better just go back to your people. But he was very patient because he must have had a tremendous reputation, which is why they went to Balaam. He apparently did this thing where he would curse people and do other things, and apparently it's worked, or else he wouldn't have the reputation. At least the reputation made it seem like it worked, so he would have people looking for him to do this. So you have Balaam going before the God of that people. And he probably did that basically with any peoples. I mean, whether it's the God of the Moabites, you talk to, the God of the Moabites, whatever he would, or at least claim to. Does that make sense? And so then we get to this part here where Elohim comes to him and says, look, if the men come to you, rise and go with them, but only the word that I give you, you speak and do. And then he gets up, gets on his donkey, and the displeasure of Elohim burns against him. Why? Because he did not wait. Now, apparently the men didn't come to him, and if he had just waited and the men didn't come, none of the rest of it plays out. But he chose to get up and go. And so he got ahead of the word of Yahweh. After he just told him, I can't go beyond the word of Yahweh, well, then he did. Because we all can when we interpret it through filters. And his filter was, all he was looking for was, do I go or do I stay? All right, so, I can go? Yeah, well, there was an if part that you missed. You skipped the if. Okay, so that's a great question. It gets asked every year because people also can miss that, because this is part of why we have a problem with Torah observance. We're told the blessings and all the wonderful things, but they're all based on if you guard and keep my commands, if you obey my voice, if, all those, we don't want the if. If you agree, right, the covenant, Exodus 19, to obey every word that comes out of my mouth, then I will blah, blah, blah. We just listen to we want the then. If you love me and guard my commands, then I will send you the helper, John 14:15. Okay, so we want the helper, but we forget about the if. And so when you were reading this, you missed the small two-letter word if. If they come to you, then go. We don't have any verse saying they came to him, so that must be the problem. Okay? Yahweh's not going to say, well, that you can go, and they get mad at you because you went. Okay, next question.
Okay, I've got one here for Numbers 22:22.
Okay.
This person says, this reminds me of when Yeshua cursed the barren fig tree. What can we glean from this?
I don't see how that has anything to do with the barren fig tree. Okay. I mean, in 22, this pleasure of Elohim burns against him, and he sends a messenger to station to block his way. And so not only did Yahweh not want him to go, he sent a messenger to stop him from going. Because he wanted to make it clear, if you're going to do this, you're going to do exactly what I tell you, or you're not going to do this. So I don't see any connection to that in the fig tree. Okay? Now, of course, the fig tree didn't bear fruits, and so he curses the fig tree, etc. That's not the same thing. You don't see him instructing the fig tree to give fruit, to bear fruit, and he doesn't, etc. This is one of those direct, sort of, you interact with Yahweh, he tells you what to do, and you don't do it, and you end up in trouble. All right? Because remember, the fig tree didn't ask Yeshua whether or not it should grow fruit. Balaam asked Yahweh a question. He waited for Yahweh to give him an answer about something. So this is a relational interaction between him and the creator of the universe. Well, why is he interacting with that guy? Because Balak brought him into the mix and wanted him to curse Israel. So Yahweh decided, I'm going to deal with it. I mean, it wasn't Yahweh's. Now, he knew it was going to happen, so he was ready for it. And he said, okay, Balaam, he asked you to do this. Okay, let me tell you how this is going to work. You're not going to do it. And by the way, the verse that I was going for earlier is in 22:18, when he says, and Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, though Balak were to give me all this wonderful stuff, this is what you buy. Wait, okay, so your boss says to you, if you will work Saturdays, you'll get double time, I'll give you a raise, I'll give you a promotion, though we were to fill your house with silver and gold, you have to say, I am unable to go beyond the word of Elohim, beyond the word of Yahweh Elohim, to do less or more. And what that means, I can't work Saturday. Because a lot of people say, oh, but he offered me this, he offered me that. Look, we had a guy in the congregation that went to a Vols game because he got free tickets. Now, he may have thought that was equivalent to silver or gold filled houses because those are hard tickets to get. Not anymore. Nobody's doing anything. But back then, to get the tickets, if you're a Vols fan and you lived in Knoxville, you wanted to go to the game, that was hard to come by. And so he missed Shabbat, went to the game. But you got to be able to use those words. I can't go beyond the word of Yahweh. All right, next.
Okay, and I have one for 22, verses 23 and 28. They want to know, can animals perceive things he cannot? Wondering because it said, Yahweh Almighty opened the mouth of the donkey.
Okay, I'm going to go into my little sidebar thing that I do each time we go through this. I don't want to take away from anything literal in any of the accounts you read in Scripture, although there are those in the Jewish community that will tell you that every bit of it was literal, but also every bit of it was metaphorical to teach us something else, that all of it's to tell us other things. Okay, so you have a donkey who's speaking. Donkey is a representative of what symbolically? A beast of burden, a servant, a laborer that's under your instruction, under your authority. And this donkey talks to Balaam at some point. And Balaam never freaks out. You would think this would be strange. Look, Moses sees a bush burning, and he thought it odd enough to turn where he was going and go check out this tree or this bush that was burning, but yet it wasn't burning. You would think that Balaam might take pause at his donkey talking to him. But we don't see that. So I have often interpreted this as a lifelong servant, like a Sherpa, that would carry his stuff and take his things, and like a personal servant assistant that would be with him his whole life. And it might have been that servant never really spoke up because he wouldn't, you only speak when spoken to type of thing as a servant. And Yahweh opened his mouth and said, you need to say something. Now, of course, Balaam is angry with it, as a master would be with his servant speaking when he shouldn't speak, or speaking without being spoken to. Because he says to him, he goes, am I not your servant or your donkey on which you have ridden ever since I became yours to this day? Was I ever known to do these things to you? No. So why have you beaten? Why are you beating me? What did I ever do? I've been trustworthy. I've been reliable. I've been, respectful. Okay? And he said no to the donkey. Now, the donkey's having this conversation, and he's like, Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey. The donkey says, what have I done to you that you've beaten me these 3 times? And Balaam says, the donkey's talking. No, he goes, because you've mocked me. And I wish there was a sword in my hand, for I would kill you by now. That sounds like a master and a servant. You mocked me. How dare you speak when not spoken to? How dare you, usurp and complain about what's going on here? Why would you block my way? I'm trying to go straight and you take me off the road. So it's definitely, in my opinion, definitely in my opinion, that doesn't work, okay? It's definitely an opinion that this is telling us a whole lot more, that here you have likely a righteous servant. Okay? And the righteous servant can see, but the unrighteous master can't. And the righteous servant sees the messenger until Balaam's eyes get opened and then he can see. But they're only open because he needs to see in order for the righteous servant to not get killed. To protect the righteous servant, Balaam's eyes are opened because he's not believing what the donkey's saying. So the messenger of Yahweh says, why have you beaten your donkey these 3 times? See, I've come out to stand against you because your way is reckless before me. And the donkey saw me and turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I certainly would have killed you by now. That's the love of a servant who cares about the master that they're serving. It's a great metaphor. Okay? So I think that's a lot better than the almost Disney-like fantasy of a donkey here, and, all of a sudden Balaam is Shrek, Donkey, why are you taking me off the path, donkey? Because the messenger was going to kill you. But it's much more powerful than that. Okay? Anyway, that's a good point I like to bring up in this conversation. All right, next. From now on, all of you are going to read this Torah portion and hear Shrek's voice as Balaam. It's going to have sort of an Irish ogre accent or something, Donkey. Come on now, Shrek. I'm just trying to save you. All right, go ahead. I can't do Eddie Murphy's voice, but.
Chapter 22, verse 34. What does it mean when it says, if evil is in your eyes, let me turn back? Is he referring to his own evil? In other words, asking for his mercy?
Well, evil meaning if you want to do harm to me. Okay? He's like, at this point, I see you. I've heard what you had to say. And if you're looking to do harm to me, just let me turn back. I'm not going to go. Okay? You made your point, is what he's saying. I get it. So if you want me to turn back, don't kill me, don't hurt me, I'll just turn back. All right? But then the messenger says, no, I want you to go, but I want you to do what you originally told, to only speak that which I tell you to speak. And you see him very diligently obeying from then on, okay, in this scenario. All right, next.
I can't stop giggling back here now.
Because now every time Balaam is, all of a sudden you're hearing Shrek, so,
Okay, here we go. Here's a question for Numbers 22. This is one of the random questions, no verse. Why did El tell Balaam not to go? Oh, no, I think you already covered that. Last one for 22. Could the multiple sacrifices also be for us to realize that if we ask with the wrong heart, seeking the wrong thing, it doesn't matter how many times we ask, it will be a firm no?
Okay, I can agree with that. Okay. Anything else for 22?
That's my last one
Okay.
for 22.
In 22:3, Balak wants to show Balaam the abundance of how many the people are. So let's understand that you see this consistently in Scripture. When we are many, people are afraid. Not that they should be, okay? But it says there, and Moab was exceedingly afraid of the people because they were many. The more we grow, the more the people will be afraid of us, okay? Or afraid what they think that the fact that we're many will mean to them. So just keep that in mind as we go, through forward in time here, as we grow, as the body grows in general, that if we become more visibly numerous, it could cause fear. It did that with the Israelites in Egypt. It did that here with Balak, all right? It did that in Rome when they were occupying things, in Jerusalem, when they were occupying Palestine and Israel, and they were afraid of the numbers. Okay, when we are numerous, the world, the below, is afraid because we represent a threat to that delusion bubble, to that world order. Not personally, but they know we represent the one that will overturn that. But since they can't deal with him, they have to deal with us, or they choose to deal with us because that's all they can do is deal with the representatives. And this is why you see the consistent historical attacks on all the Jews, because the Jews were visibly the remnant. And so that's why you can see that. That's why there's been historically all those attacks on Christians. Not that Christians, again, are not confused in so many levels, but they were visibly seeking to be in line with the Elohim of the universe and the Messiah. So when we are publicly more and more and growing, that feels like a threat to the world. And it is a threat in a not physical way. It's a threat in a way to their thinking and their delusion bubble. The way they see everything through their way of perceiving it is threatened to be burst into a different reality, into actual reality from their delusion. Okay? And we've taught this many times that as a psychological understanding, generally speaking, when people are in a delusionary state, which simply means they're processing the reality incompletely or inaccurately or having some issue processing reality, that anything that threatens that generally gets reacted to in a somewhat violent way, whether verbally violent or physically violent. And so that's what's going on here. So here, Israel is nearby, not doing anything to Balak and the Moabites, but yet Balak is flipping out because he sees there's a lot of them, and generally, if there's a lot of them, they're looking to do some harm to me. Because that's what was happening in those days. Large groups of people were looking to make war. You didn't see a big group of people moving around unless it was an army. I mean, whole nations didn't just move around. Okay? And so he was interpreting it through this. Just keep that in mind as part of chapter 22. I think we covered all the rest of it in 22. 23. All right, Manny?
Okay, somebody would like you to please elaborate on chapter 23, verse 11.
I don't know. It just says what it says. I mean, it says, Balak is looking at Balaam, what have you done to me? I told you to curse and you blessed. It's just a frustrated potential employer here saying, I hired you to do something, you did the opposite. And Balaam's like, but I already told you, and I told your guys, I can't do more than Yahweh says. But yet, Balaam keeps trying. He says, well, go over to this mountain now, okay, make 7 altars and make the sacrifices, and we'll try again, and we'll try again, and we'll try again. Balaam just wants to get paid. But he knows he has to do it waiting on Yahweh to tell him it's okay, and Yahweh doesn't. Next.
Last one that I have for 23. Somebody wants to know on chapter 23, verse 23, towards the end of the scripture, why is the name of Jacob and Israel mentioned together when he is the same man?
Okay, so 23 All right? And that also goes into 24:1. We're going to get to dealing with the sorcery part. But look, Yahweh often repeats elements even within the same sentence when he wants to double emphasize something. So say the same thing more than one way. So he says, for there is no sorcery against Yaakov, nor is there any divination against Israel. Okay, so he's trying to make sure that he's emphasizing the point. And then he continues, says, now it is said to Yaakov and to Israel, what has Hazael done? Now what he could be talking about is the literal sons of Jacob and their descendants and those that were grafted in. That's another way that he could be looking at it. Those had attached themselves to Israel. But he's really trying to say the same thing with double weight, double emphasis. There would be no sorcery to work. And Balaam recognizes this in chapter 24. He says, and when Balaam saw that it had pleased Yahweh to bless Israel, he did not go as at other times to seek to use sorcery, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And this is why historically we believe, and there's a scripture reference or two that kind of point to it, that Balaam was behind the women coming into the camp. So he wasn't going to use sorcery. He was going to use other means to try to accomplish. He wanted to get paid. So it's okay, Balak, I can't do the curse thing you want me to do. Yahweh just keeps stopping me. So he realizes sorcery is not going to work because you have 23 and verse 23 to say that, and then 24:1. All right, sorcery is not going to work. I'm going to have to realize I'm going to have to seek to do things without using sorcery. So I'm going to get him with the ladies. And it worked, too. Okay? That's why they'll say things like, metaphorically, that the woman has me under her spell. Men can be hypnotized and mesmerized by the woman. We see this all over the place. It's nothing against the women. It's not that the women in general are sorcering or doing. It's just men are made to desire the women and want to please them, etc., and do what they can to get them to desire them back. And so women have a lot of power to get men to do stuff. And so Balaam recognizes that and starts and uses the ladies. Until Pinchas stands up and says, enough of that. Okay? All right. What else you got? 23?
I didn't have any more for 23.
All right. Let me just see if I had one more. No. Let's see. What was the other verse? No, go to 24.
Okay, I have one for 24:17. It says, is this verse talking about Yeshua?
Yes and no. It's talking first and foremost about David HaMelech, King David. Okay? Because who's going to deal with the Moabites first in our story going through the journey before we get to Yeshua? King David. Okay? So, yes, it's talking about Yeshua. But remember, he says he shall smite the corners of Moab. Yeshua didn't do that in his walk on the earth. David did. Okay? So you got to remember, again, and I'm not picking on the person who said this, we are all susceptible to this. You're again doing the same thing when you missed the if. So you saw a star has come, a scepter shall rise. Yeshua! Well, that's true. But it's the person is still also going to smite the corners of Moab. Yeshua didn't do that. David did. Okay? So just be careful with that. Okay, so we're looking at types and shadows. So yes, this absolutely, I would say, is pointing ultimately to Yeshua. Okay, but in this case, no. In this case, it's really specifically talking about Balaam is telling Balak, he said, I will tell you what's going to befall your people. Come listen to me and I'll tell you what's the future. There will be one rising that's going to smack at you real hard. Okay? A star is going to come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall smite the corners of Moab, and shall destroy all the sons of Seth. We're talking about David. Okay? All right, next.
That's all I had for 24. I have another one. I have one for 25.
Okay, hold on. Let me see. 24. Okay, so I wanted to point out something. I know we bring this up occasionally, and I love it because, after all, it does, get everybody mad at me, etc. So why not? So in 24:2, and Balaam lifted up his eyes and saw Israel encamped according to their tribes, and the Spirit of Elohim came upon him. Okay, so this is the Spirit of Elohim. So look, the Spirit of Elohim, by the way, came on all of you while you were sinners and in churches or in the world or doing whatever. So don't think that the Spirit can't come on to anybody under any circumstance in any different situation. But also, this goes back to something that I like to kind of poke at, is that you will not find, there's a group of guys out there that have a little talk show on YouTube that mocked me for this, but they didn't understand my point. I'm going to say it again. I think it is interesting, and it's also accurate, that the actual Hebrew phrase, Ruach HaKodesh, doesn't exist anywhere. I didn't say the Holy Spirit doesn't exist anywhere. I didn't say the Ruach HaKodesh doesn't exist anywhere. But then they'll point to verses, well, what about in this verse it says, the Spirit of Elohim? That's not Ruach HaKodesh. It is the Ruach HaKodesh, but it's not the actual Hebrew phrase, Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? It's like when I say Shema Yisrael, we know that Deuteronomy 6:4 says Shema Yisrael. That's the actual Hebrew words. So here it says Ruach Elohim. Okay? It says Spirit of Elohim came upon him. That is the Ruach HaKodesh. But I'm just simply understanding I brought that up in the past. In Hebrew, a phrase we use all the time has never been said in the Hebrew in the Tanakh anywhere. We have come up with that phrase. Again, it doesn't mean that the Ruach HaKodesh didn't exist, didn't flow everywhere. Go listen to the teaching I did, on understanding the Spirit, or listen to, the teachings about Yeshua the light and how that Spirit and that light came into the world in the beginning before there were the star, the suns and the moon, the stars, and all the other lights. Okay? But I thought, as a fascinating thing, now we read English, but if you could read Hebrew and look for the words in Hebrew, the phrase is not there in the Hebrew. Now, if you find the phrase in Hebrew, please send it to me. I'll be happy to admit I'm wrong. But don't send me the verse in the Psalms or the verse everywhere else where it says in the Hebrew, Ruach Elohim, or Ruach Elohecha, the Ruach of your Elohim, etc. All these different verses, but we're looking for Ruach HaKodesh in Hebrew as a phrase, okay? There's a place where it says, your spirit. Okay, we know what he's talking about. All right, so I just thought I'd throw that out there because, after all, I hadn't really messed anybody up too much already today with all the craziness and the Shrek talk and everything else. All right, let's see. All right, I think that'll do it for chapter 24. I'll be happy with that because it's almost 10:30. Go ahead for 25. You have one for 24? Okay, Rick.
Yeah, I don't know why I never saw this before. This is my third time going through the Torah cycle with MTOI. I guess my eyes weren't open, but verse 3 of 24, right following what you just quoted on, he talks about the saying of him, speaking of himself, who hears the words of El, who sees the visions of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes opened wide. And then he says that again in verse 15. He does the same thing. So I'm taking it here that the Spirit of Elohim, in verse 2, his eyes were open before with the donkey. Now they're open wide. And he goes on and says, not just that, but he sees the vision of the Almighty, who falls down with eyes open wide. So are we to fall down metaphorically in humility and awe to the King of the universe when he opens our eyes and do everything he tells us to do?
Well, I would agree with your statement. I don't know that that's what this is trying to say. I think, look, this is Balaam trying to make the point, kind of like when you hear Yeshua or one of the other ones in the Brit say, truly, truly, or verily, verily. This is him trying to say, this is coming direct from above. I see it clearly. It's a clear message. It doesn't mean, by the way, that he's now had his eyes and ears open permanently for the future. He clearly goes off a wrong path. And we know that Balaam is, talked about in not very flattering terms in the future when looked back upon as being one of the false ones to lead Israel astray. But what we're talking about is he's trying to make a point that what I'm about to tell you comes from someone who has fallen down, has completely submitted at this moment to this vision and sees very clearly. So he's using idiomatic phrases to help make that case, so that the listener would know you're supposed to trust what I'm saying. Okay? What else we got for 25? Anything? Okay.
Oh, you know what? I think you answered it. It had to do with the significance of hanging the leaders.
Yep, and that was the only other thing I had in 25, so good.
So I have two random questions. Still of the readings, just no chapter or verses. One of them is, Rabbi, did Aharon die on the mountain as a direct result from his part in the rock incident?
No, I don't think that it had exactly to do with that. I mean, look, he had already said, well, yes and no. I mean, he had said, you're not going in. Either one of you are not going in because of this. Now, remember, up to this point, they were going in, but everybody over 20, other than them and Caleb and Joshua, were going in. Now, they were not going in. Now, he had already told Moses, he's going to tell Moses, you can see it, but you're not going to go in it. So he's already planning to have Moses finish the journey. Aaron, he's going to pass the mantle on to his son. Okay? Because Moses doesn't have anybody to pass the mantle on yet. He's not going to give it to Joshua yet. Moses' job was to bring them to the land. Aaron's job could be done by anybody, so to speak, but not just anybody. But I mean, it could be one of his sons. It wasn't significant that way. Moses had to complete his journey, but he wasn't going to get to go in. So as a direct result, yes. As a direct result, meaning why it happened that quickly, I don't think it's connected that way. Because it doesn't happen to Moses that quickly. All right? Now, we don't know how old Aaron was. We don't know what else was going on. But apparently Aaron had completed his journey and didn't need to do anything else. So he could pass the mantle on to his son. Okay? Who then somehow doesn't really pick up the mantle very well because Pinchas has to pick up the mantle and grab the spear. So that's kind of, interesting to see, as that all happens. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, this one I figured I'd ask you because I don't think they're understanding the serpent thing correctly. They want to know, does the serpent also represent Messiah because the serpent took away their sins and Messiah takes away our sins?
Okay, the serpent didn't take away their sins. They were just healed. And in other words, the curse stopped at that point. The plague stopped at that point. In other words, point taken. The people didn't repent at that point. The people didn't own what they did at that point. Okay, so you don't have a forgiveness of sin thing there. However, he was no longer plaguing them with the biting of the serpents and people dying. So at that point, the message was delivered. Now, we don't have a lot of detail, so I'm guessing that my interpretation is one of the possibilities of what the message was, which is watch what you're doing, listen to what voice you're following. Are you listening to the Creator? Are you listening to the enemy, the adversary? Are you listening to the serpent? Or are you listening to the Creator? And so look at, own it, recognize who you were listening to, what voice you were listening to. But if you look at it, it says that the plague ceased. It doesn't say that they were forgiven of sin and all that other stuff. It doesn't say that there. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
And the last one I have is just somebody's curiosity regarding 22:23, referring to Bilam's donkey as her. So would that be a female servant, possibly?
Okay, again, we're looking at pronouns and things like that that are not in the Hebrew, but it has to do with the way the word is spelled. So donkeys, and different objects have either a feminine or a masculine way that the language, because in English we don't have that. Okay, in English we just have words that are just words unless we actually add something in front of it, like he or she, him or her, and those kind of things. Okay? But in other languages, there's the masculine or the feminine default of the word. Okay? Certain things always are expressed in the feminine, certain ones are expressed in the masculine. So in the English translation, that's what they did. So I would say that you probably don't need to interpret into that. Okay?
That was it?
You're welcome. Okay, good. Okay? Because the word there just would have been donkey, which would have been expressed as a feminine. And then because of that, I would guess that that's where we were at. Okay? Okay, Steve?
I just had one comment. It's kind of a song reference for Manny, too.
Excuse me, I do the song references.
Okay, never mind.
No, go ahead.
Love bites when we allow the serpent of our personality to take control and let things run.
Okay, that's why I said I do the song references. That was almost one of those ones when I saw him going up there going, I probably should stop him before he gets to the mic. So I'll own that because I could have prevented that. Okay, so anyway, no, I understand what you're trying to say, okay? But look, we're dealing with something that in the Peshat is not clear. So we're forced to go into one of the other levels, either the hidden or the hinted at or the metaphorical. And so we've been looking at, or allegorical as they would say, so we're looking at these other levels of understanding. Trying to understand why a serpent on a pole and why did they have to look at it and what's going on here. Makes no sense when you consider that would seem very, idolatry-related stuff or pagan-related. It would seem like it would be not appropriate. And so this was my guess, okay, in terms of interpreting it. And so, you can take it or leave it, or it doesn't really matter. It's not that important. We're just trying to understand something, so, I think that if we take it the way I gave it to you, it may have some value in use going forward anyway. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for the Torah study tonight. And so we need somebody to go ahead and close us in prayer. All right, let's go ahead and get Michael. You want to close us in prayer? You're going to have to tell you what. You get the mic, come stand by me, and he'll get the camera on you. No, instead of you having to worry about the mic. The camera. Michael's running the camera today. So come stand over here in the front, and then Rick will get you on camera. So if you go ahead and rise, we'll go ahead and close in prayer. All right, go ahead, Michael.
Our Father, we come before you, humbled, grateful for the study that you have given us tonight. Father, we would ask that the words would be engraved in our hearts and our mind so that we can apply it in a worthy manner. So, Father, I also ask that you guide us to our homes and that we make it there safe. We give you all praise, honor, and glory in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen.
Amen. Okay, so if you want to come up here and wave goodbye to everybody, come on up. We're going to wave and wish everybody a Laila Tov, a good night, a good week. Tell them we love them. That seems like an oxymoron, social distancing. Because we come together to be social, we distance to be antisocial. All right. It's like government intelligence. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay. All right, are we ready? Got everybody over here? All right, so on 3, we're going to wish everybody a Laila Tov, which is a good night, Shavua Tov, which is a good week, and we're going to tell them we love them. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Laila Tov!